Hello, YouTube. This is Said Mirza from ReallyNotReason.com, and I wanted to give you the news that my book Tyranny 2.0 is now published and available for purchase on Amazon.com. And there's two ways you can get it. You can either buy the Kindle ebook version for 99 cents, or you can buy this paperback version, which is available for $4.99. And I think you can get free shipping on Amazon with the Prime account, or if a certain threshold is reached with your cart. So a lot of these ideas in the book are I give credit to Brother Gerrans and also to the late Alan Watt. And what is this book about? Well, this book is about the satanic tyranny that we are living under, and that this system controls us from literally from birth to death. We get a birth certificate when we are born, and we get a death certificate when we die. So this is the reality that we are in. I mean, this is not fiction. We are constantly being bombarded with fiction, but the reality is that we are ruled, and there's a satanic tyranny which is continuing to turn the screws on mankind. And that's why ever since you were born, situation has been going from bad to worse, and will continue to get worse and worse. Now, I wanted to talk about the cover of this book because I think it's interesting and important. You might know this as the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., but what really this is the symbol of the satanic tyranny. It is an obelisk. And this is mentioned in the Quran. The Quran uses the word al-Awtadun, which is usually translated as pegs, in the context of the Pharaoh. When this is an old symbol that was used by Pharaoh, and we're gonna get into the similarities between this tyranny and the tyranny of Pharaoh in a bit. But this is the obelisk in Egypt for one of the pharaohs. You might recognize this one. This is now these obelisks are now erected pretty much all over the world, which signifies that this is a global tyranny. So what I want to do in this video is I'm not going to go through a big introduction. I'm just going to dive into the chapters in the book and just give you a brief overview, because I know everyone is pressed for time, and you might not. I mean, you want to make sure you're investing your time wisely, and so this is kind of a teaser, if you will, of my book. And if you think that the ideas presented in here are interesting, then you're free to download this book as a PDF for free, or you can purchase it however you want to go through the material. So this satanic tyranny that we are under, it's at the top of it is Satan, and the elites worship Satan, and we're gonna get into that as well. But I wanted to start out the book by the chapter called the Quran, and the reason for that is that I wanted to bring people's attention to the relevance of the Quran in our day and age. A lot of people have this question that this is an old book, 1400 years old. What possible significance or relevance does it have to with us? And the answer is it does. What the Quran is doing is destroying the illusion, the propaganda, and the brainwashing that we have been born in under, and we are constantly subjected to, and giving us the reality that this life is temporary, it's fragile, and that we will die, and we will be raised up on the day of judgment to account for our deeds to our Maker, and we will be rewarded with either punishment or bliss. So I think the first thing that we need to understand is that the Quran is about fearing God. The Quran is a book in which should increase you in taqwa, which is fear of God. And I talk a little bit about the average Muslim, because the average Muslim, and me being an average Muslim, I was born and raised in a Sunni household, so I'm really intimately familiar with the mindset of the Muslims. The average Muslim has no clue what the Quran is saying. All he's interested in is um, finding something in the Quran that he's basically testing his beliefs against the Quran, and just being assured that what he's doing is sanctioned by God. But he has no mm, he does not want to change. This is really the problem. The mindset is that, I'm right, and that's the way it is. And obviously that's why the hadith is used, because the hadith is sort of an auxiliary that is has been added to with the Quran, because otherwise the religion of Islam does not have any support in the Quran. And so I think it's important that people understand that the Quran and the religion of Islam are two separate things. Then we talk about the stone idol, the Kaaba, which Muslims revere and worship and make pilgrimage to. And I make it clear, I make it plain that this is a stone idol, and that the Muslims are just blindly following their ancestors, something which is discouraged in the Quran. And I talk about religion. That religion is the oldest form of control. Religions were managed, were created, and are supported by the elites because they serve their purposes. And the idea behind a religion is to get people to do useless rituals and to put their hopes in a savior, and kind of just not understand their responsibilities towards the creator, and work on reforming themselves and actually resisting the tyranny. So the Quran calls itself a guidance for mankind. So it's for every man. It's not just for the Arabs. It's not just for the Muslims. It's a guidance for mankind. And the Quran is a warning about the day of judgment, about God's promise coming to pass, and we're going to touch on that later. The Quran is a reminder. It should have us remembering God, and the hereafter. The Quran requires understanding, and the Quran is a mercy for the believers. So, with this, we start the book, if you will. This is the first chapter. I think is important. The second chapter is about Satan. Now, Satan, since this is a satanic tyranny, the modus operandi of Satan is that he deceives, and this tyranny is based on deception. As a result, everything the tyranny does, everything the tyranny says, these are two separate things, and this is not anything new because this is how Satan works. And but the Gerrans translates Satan as the adversary, and this adversary to man, he was basically, he used to occupy a certain station, but then he was thrown down and humiliated, and this started the sort of war against man. And Satan is man's enemy because he wants to show God that man is not worthy of the honor that was bestowed upon him, and that Adam, the first man, and his wife, they were deceived by Satan into eating from the forbidden tree. And what this forbidden tree is, because Adam was given the knowledge of all things, and this Christian concept that the tree was had knowledge of good and evil. This does not make sense within the theology of the Quran because Adam already had knowledge of everything, and the whole reasoning as to why Adam was punished was had to basically leave and come down to earth was because he ate from the tree, and this tree symbolically represents the limits of God. So he transgressed the limits of God, and as a result, he became a sinner and he lost his cloak of righteousness. And this is the reason why Adam and his progeny are sent to the earth so that they can reform, repent, and do good deeds, and hopefully, with God's mercy, reclaim their lost station and enter their original abode. So we talk about the leave given to Iblis, which was the name of which is the name of Satan. Satan is just a title. Iblis, this entity that's created out of fire, he is given leave to whisper to man, and suggest evil and deceit and intrigue to him. Now, this forbidden tree has it's used in the Quran as sort of a symbolic thing, but also it has a literal, it is a literal tree. It is located in the midst of the hellfire. It is also called the tree of Zakum, and this tree was shown in a vision to Prophet Muhammad, and he was terror stricken when he saw it. All these things can be teased out of the text if you look carefully at all the instances of this mention of the tree, which I have done. So, I kind of bring all these threads together to show you that this tree of Zakum is the tree from which the sinners will eat on the day in the hellfire. And this is the same tree that Adam and his wife ate from, and that this tree was shown to Prophet Muhammad to serve as a warning for mankind. Okay, so that's pretty much all of chapter 2. Chapter 3, Tyranny 2.0. This is the crux of the book. And in this chapter, I devote a lot of text to show you that this is a total war that we are under. And that, we should take Satan as an enemy, as God has exhorted us to, because he is a very cunning and deceptive enemy. And he's not some bumbling fool. He has a strategy, and he is implementing that strategy, and he is leading men astray from the path of God, multitudes of them. And the way he works is that he suggests, he whispers to the elites, the people in power, certain things, certain plots, certain schemes, certain deceptions, which they do, and obviously they get further astray from the path of God and into the arms of Satan. So they are literally Satan worshippers. They worship Satan. They believe in him. They trust in him, and they follow his whispers. So, in the context of Tyranny 2.0, the Quran uses a specific word, al taghut, which is usually translated as idols, is a generic term. But what al taghut means is that al taghut are these forces of Satan. These are the evil forces, and these idols, these forces are intertwined with sorcery, and tyranny uses both al taghut, these idols, and sorcery to control the masses. And the Quran talks about this in quite a few contexts. So, what I've been trying to do with this book is to kind of present to a reader who's astute that the Quran has a theological underpinning, and that there's concepts in the Quran that all come together to give us understanding of the reality. And in Tyranny 2.0, you do see these idols that people worship, the idols of state, idols of medicine, the idols of authority. These are all idols, and these are al taghut, because what they do is they lead men from the light to darkness. And sorcery is closely related to them, and we're gonna get to sorcery in a bit. But sorcery, what is sorcery? Sorcery is the turning about of something. It's an illusion. It's fakery. So in that context, propaganda, mind control, CGI, whatever you're seeing in television, how the news is presented to you, dramas, fiction, some guy landing on the moon. These are all under the umbrella of sorcery. Now, Tyranny 2.0 is based on fear. It literally is based on fear. But once we realize that God alone has power over everything, then that fear is dispelled, and we can resist this tyranny. And I also show that this Tyranny 2.0 is now global, because every country has a central bank, and all the major cities have obelisks in them, and all it's just one unified system. So then we get into the tyranny of Pharaoh, and in this is really, I think, an eye-opening part of this chapter, because what I'm trying to do is to show you that it's not just one or two things that you would just write off as coincidence. Everything in this Tyranny 2.0 mirrors what was happening in the tyranny of Pharaoh, which obviously is then tyranny 1.0. And the first thing is the rule by council, because Pharaoh was not ruling alone. He had Haman and Qarun, and they had a council that was scheming and that was strategizing. Same like today, we have the think tanks, we have World Economic Forum, G20, and the World Bank, IMF, all these, they implement policies, they implement strategies by which they are able to strengthen their grip on power. And also that this is a hierarchical structure, and this is the same case in the case of Pharaoh, where he had certain tiers of people. They were the most oppressed were the children of Israel, and then above them were his own people, and then above them were the elites of their time, the sorcerers. So this is mirrored in the hierarchical structure that we have today. Now, Pharaoh was also doing he was working corruption in the land by dividing the people into sects and slaughtering men. And this is actually mirrored in Tyranny 2.0 as well, where we have the division of people into ideological boxes. And also we have the feminist movement, and the other movements that serve to further split the family into fragmented bits, so it's easier to pick off individuals. And I'm not gonna get into the depopulation agenda that's going on right now, but it's in the book, so feel free to read it and agree with it or disagree with it. Let's talk about religion. This is important because the Tyranny 2.0 states that that you would think they don't have a religion, but they do have a religion. That religion is science. And even though science calls itself as the it's a pursuit of reason, and that is based on evidence, etc., etc. Those are just empty words. Again, this is deception, because science is a religion, and it has a lot of commonalities with religions. And I go over some of the commonalities, as in science has a priestly class. There's a group of scientists who are basically not questioned about their representation of reality. And then you have the mythology of science about the beginning and ending of the universe. Again, this is a classic religion thing. And then you have the division of God's powers between its various idols. In the case of science, we have the Big Bang being the creator, the evolution being the fashioner, and human intellect being the knower. And these are all the preserves of God alone. And also, finally, science has a code of ethics. It's based on materialism and atheism, and it claims that there is no God, so man can do as he pleases. And obviously, we know that is incorrect. So we talk about the use of science or scientific knowledge, the real true scientific knowledge, which is obviously not given to the masses, and how that scientific knowledge is being used to discover new things in the universe. You have Tyranny 2.0 launching satellites and telescopes to peer into the heavens. This is something that Pharaoh was doing too. He ordered his religious priest Haman, to construct a tower and look into the heavens so that he could discover the God of Moses. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Okay, the financial system. Again, the financial system of Tyranny 2.0 is based on usury, which is forbidden in the Quran. And what I mean by usury, I'm also including interest. Anything that causes an increase in wealth via interest is forbidden in the Quran. And the elites have designed this system to siphon the masses' wealth up to their coffers. I mean, that's known. I think. I mean, central banks, all they do is issue fake currency and implement economic policies that destroy and devastate. But what's interesting is that in the context of tyranny of Pharaoh, we have Qarun, who was a wealthy man. And it says that he had treasuries whose keys would burden a group possessing strength. So that's how much money he had. And this would mean that there was a financial system that was the same, that was using the same oppressive tactics as today to create billionaires and trillionaires. Now, finally, we come to the use of sorcery, and I think this is very important because, for a long time, I used to wonder why the Quran talks about sorcery in Pharaoh and what relevance does that have to do with us. Well, then I realized that we are living under sorcery. The masses are literally hypnotized, and they're brainwashed day and night. Everything they consume has a payload. So, I talk about the sorcery in the case of media, how the propaganda deception works, and that Moses came to basically show. When he threw his staff, it destroyed their fakery. It consumed their fakery, and they were the sorcerers at the time of Pharaoh were using sorcery to terrorize the masses. This is exactly what we see today with the false flag attacks and pandemics, etc., etc. Okay. Now, final piece of evidence in regards to the Tyranny 2.0 and the Tyranny of Pharaoh is the obelisk, as I mentioned in the beginning. The obelisk is the symbol for Tyranny 2.0, and this obelisk that is located in Washington D.C. interestingly is the obelisk to which every president of the United States faces when when they do the swearing in ceremony. So I touch upon that. There's pictures in there too for you to look at. And what's interesting is that the Quran is using this word al-Atadun, which is basically what God is referring to Pharaoh as being the possessor of al-Atadun. And it's in the context you can see clearly that what's being talked about are impressive structures. And God also compares this to the mountains. So, a mountain has a peak, and a mountain is kind of triangular in nature. If you ever looked at a mountain and thought about, how its structure looks like, it looks like an obelisk or a pyramid. So, with this obelisk, it's in your face. You can see that is the same symbol of the satanic tyranny. And finally, that God destroys tyrannies, and that is his precedent. And so this tyranny will be destroyed, God willing, soon. Okay, chapter 4, the promise. This is an interesting topic because the Quran refers to the promise, and this is a very specific promise that God has made that He will resurrect men on the day of judgment and reward them for their deeds. And this is really the crux of the difference. This is the Furqan, if you want to call it that, the division between a believer and a rejecter, because a believer believes in God's promise, whereas a rejecter believes in Satan's promise. And so, what is Satan's promise? Satan's promise is the same promise that he made to Adam and his wife, that they would have an everlasting dominion that decays not, and that they would become immortals. And we already know how that turned out for Adam. He lost everything, and he was confined to. He was sent down to the earth to live out a mortal existence. So, the opposite of what Satan promised him became true. Because again, Satan is a deceiver. So those people who believe in Satan's promise that if they acquire enough wealth or power or influence, they can transcend death, or they can become immortals, or etc., etc. These guys are being deceived, because on the day of judgment they will realize that they were subjected to death like every human being, and also that the treasures they accumulated are now the source of misery and suffering for them. So then I look at some of the arguments that God makes for His promise, because again, the Quran appeals to reason, to logic. And if you've ever read my previous book, Will You Not Reason? The Concordance of God's Arguments in the Quran, I have compiled a list of arguments in the Quran that relate to the existence of a creator, the eventuality of a life after death, quite extensively. And this is kind of a summary of some of those arguments here, because the DNA for this book is actually the theology of the Quran. That's how I started out with. So there's a lot of theological ideas in it and constructs in it that I think people will find useful. Um, okay, chapter 5, the true faith. Now, this is a very short chapter, because the true faith in the Quran has nothing to do with religions or rituals. It is basically that you surrender to God's will. And that's what Prophet Abraham did, and that's what all the messengers of the prophets said and exhorted men to do, to surrender your will to God and to believe in Him and trust in Him and depend upon Him. And that's really the crux of what, that is really what the true faith is all about. It has nothing to do with religions. Okay, chapter 6, making partners with God. This is a very interesting topic, a very important topic, because in my studies I realized that this sin of shirk, which is making partners with God, is the only unforgivable sin in the Quran. And as we read in chapter 4, verse 116, God does not forgive the making of a partner with Him, but He forgives other than that for whom He wills. And whoever makes a partner with God, he has gone astray into far error. So you can realize the seriousness of this concept. And unfortunately, the Muslims, they haven't really thought through things. They just think that because we are not saying that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, then we are not making partners with God. On a superficial level, that is correct, but they have not looked into this matter carefully in the Quran, because the Quran gives us examples of many many things that on the surface don't seem like making partners with God, but they are. And so we have to be very careful when it comes to making partners with God, because ultimately what it comes down to is who do you trust and power. Who do you trust will come who do you trust will come to your aid, and who do you think has power to help you, because both of these things only God has. So that's where we should place our trust, and we should believe in God and in His power to protect. And at the end of the day, it's about who do you fear. Do you fear God, or do you fear the state? And even though a lot of people claim to be monotheists, the answer is that they do fear the state. So all the religions separated from the true faith, and they all are following their own teachings. And the Quran is calling us towards the true faith and being staunch monotheists and following in the footsteps of Prophet Abraham, who did not make any partners with God. So then we go over the examples in the Quran. Trusting in wealth and children, that's making partner with God. I give an example of the man with the two gardens. This is a very important story in the Quran about this man having everything, and He never says that God has a partner, but because his actions are that he trusts in his garden to provide, and that he thinks that he trusts in his numbers, and ultimately he loses all of that, and he realizes that he was making partners with God. Trusting might. This is another interesting one, because the elites of our time think that because they have all these firepower and artillery and armaments and soldiers, that they are somehow immune to God's wrath, and that's making a partner with God. Trusting men. This is another interesting one. If we shouldn't be putting our trust in men or in ourselves. Only God can deliver us from a disaster, and only God can help. And finally, trusting Satan, because if you trust the satanic system, then you are ultimately trusting Satan to deliver you, which he will obviously not, and betray you. So there's interesting stuff in here. And finally, the final chapter is worship of God. What does that mean, worship of God? Because every religion has a certain ritual, certain format in which they worship God. Well, I looked in the Quran to see how we should be worshiping God, because the Quran never gives you a specific ritual. I mean, yeah, the Quran has prayers, in the sense that there's certain sentences in the Quran that you can use to implore to God, ask forgiveness for him, but it never gives you a set format. It does give you a set time for al-salat, which is duty, and you can look at Brother Gerrans' work to get, I guess, more familiar with what al-salat means. But in a nutshell, Muslims think that worshiping God means that that they have to perform the ritualistic prayer, which they conflate with the al-salat in the Quran. But in the Quran, the al-salat means duty, and what this duty means can be inferred from the context where this word is used. So obviously, in the case of the duty, yes, we are supposed to remember God. We are supposed to call him alone. We are supposed to implore him. We are supposed to glorify and thank and ask forgiveness of him. And this all encompasses worshiping God. But to say that there's a certain method to worshiping God, that's not supported by the Quran. Finally, do not worship Satan, because again, if you are calling to Satan, imploring Satan or his satanic system, then you are in effect worshiping Satan. And that this is something that we need to be paying more attention to, and that the elites are going into the fire unless they change course. And the Satan is not going to protect them or help them, and those people who follow the elites, who follow the celebrities, who follow this system, the satanic system, and bend their knee to this system, will also enter hell. So this is really the summary of the book Tyranny 2.0. Again, it's not a long read. It's about 100 pages long, and you can probably knock it down in a couple of hours. But I think there's a lot of things in there that are food for thought, and I think it's good for the believers to take a look at it and get from it what they can, and that's all we can do. We can just keep trying and calling people to God, because the time is near, and God protects the believers, and God is with the patient. So with that, I'm gonna end the video. I hope everyone is doing well. God willing, until next video, peace and blessings be upon you. Take care.